these represent the 4 main levels, at least according to this system. You could add sort of sub-levels of subtlety, but I think this kind of covers most of the ground in terms of the fineness versus grossness of the elements of experience that you'll be dealing with in this life anyway. So this will do, otherwise it gets too complex as well. But it is up for interpretation. Different traditions will have different views on it and so forth. These will do. They'll cover most of the elements that you'll have to deal with. You're all familiar with the I am, I hope. It's the fact that you exist. It's the I am with no form. It's the I am unconditioned. It's the I am unfiltered. And this is also called the great causal body because it's kind of like the soil for the seeds to then sprout, to then become trees. That makes sense. So it is God, but obviously God is the soil. It's the great cause for everything. So it's the great causal body. Then more specifically, we have the causal body. And subtle, mind, thoughts, symbols, imagination, and then the physical, the world that you're familiar with. I'll go a little bit deeper into that in a second. I chose to represent it like this, kind of imagining the I am to be the first person view from which you're looking out into the world. So these concentric circles of subtlety, if you will, kind of point to going more within, if you will. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we have the physical. Mainly, again, you could add more things, but this will cover most of it. Mainly, when we're talking about the physical, we're talking about the 5 external senses and what they perceive. The people, places, things, events, facts, and so forth. And you could say like the chemical material, like organs, just the chemical, dense, heavy, constructed nature of it. For the most part, just what you're dealing with, how you'll be experiencing it, what's relevant. You'll be dealing with the body, the world, and relationships to things and people. Then the subtle, you could say instead of the 5 external senses is the astral senses or the inner senses. It's just like when you're dreaming at night, you can hear things, you can see things. If you're imagining something, or if you're kind of like remote viewing, you can see things, you can hear things, you can feel things, but they're not using the physical senses. So I just kind of summarized that as the astral senses. Again, that word is up for interpretation, but you get what I'm saying. So inner senses, you could say too. Thoughts, language or words, reasoning, symbol interpretation or recognition and projection. And you could say part of this body or this level is also the energy flows, the subtle bodily energy flows. And in India, they call it the pranas, different pranas, the 5 main pranas, but it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, those are systems of exploration. Anytime you feel energy moving through, shifting, vibrational, emotional, and so forth, is largely would belong to the category of the subtle or energy body. Feels like, to sort of summarize it, feels like thoughts, feelings, and imagination. That's going to be what you're mostly dealing with, unless you do a lot of energy, bodily energy work like Kriya Yoga or Kundalini Yoga or something like that. Or healing, then you'll be dealing also quite a bit with the energy flows directly. But for the most part, for most people, interacting with the subtle body has to do with thoughts, feelings, and imagination. Then we go a little subtler yet, even though it's not called the subtler body, but it is subtler than the subtle body. So this is the causal. Causal already reveals something, which is it's the cause of what you perceive. It's the cause of the visible. It's the cause of these. At this level, we're dealing with intentions. And you could also place intentions in the subtle if you're kind of like formulating an intention. But really, this is going to be more powerful than that. So when it comes down to it, as long as everything is kind of like going according to this plan, this will line up with whatever it says and whatever it reasons and so forth. But if there's a sort of a split, this one's going to win because this one feels deeper. This one is like, oh, this is who I am. This is like my heart and so forth. So you're going to be choosing the causal level. It's the core of the ego. It's the core of defense mechanisms. It's the core of our strategizer. It's where the gremlin likes to live, which is really just, we call it a gremlin, kind of like, or we call it the ego, or we call it whatever we call it, the imposter, the hijacker, to give it a sense of like it's not you, so you can begin to explore it. However, it only appears to not be you, and you can watch my video, There's Only One You, The End of the Ego on YouTube. It only appears to not be you because you're aware of this and not of that. Does that make sense? So a lot of this, you seem to not have a whole lot of control over. Seems like you don't have that much free will at these levels, nor at this level because you're not aware of it. You're not dealing with it subtly yet, directly enough yet. So this produces sort of a thinker on your behalf, a strategizer on your behalf. And what you're going to do, there's nothing else for you to identify with except for that which you experience. You're not going to experience with some earthworm in China because it's not part of your experience. So even though this is no longer, doesn't really appear to have your free will, and these are expressions of a core perspective here, so it's going to be like a gremlin that's living in your body. And often you call it you, or you think that it's you, but we call it a gremlin to create that initial space or distance so you can see, hey, what's going on? This is not really me. These are just thoughts that appear. This is not really me. This is just a strategy that comes up, manipulation. Why am I doing that? And so forth. And through that questioning, first calling it something other than you, like the gremlin, now the question and investigation starts, and you can go to the causal level, begin to investigate, what must I believe is true? What is the core perspective that gives rise to this sort of semi under my control little creature that just kind of seems to want what it wants and does what it does and feel what it feels and have the patterns of communication and relationship that it has and so forth.